This brings us to Joe Schoen. Okay. And I got some news for you on Joe Schoen. I don't know if this is going to make you happy or it's going to make the fans happy or not. But Joe Schoen will, as this is according to John Mara, he will lead the search for a new head coach. Ian Rappaport has just reported this. He will remain in his position as general manager, will lead the search for a new head coach. Joe Mara said this, and I'm going to read you this quote here, Adrianna. We feel like Joe has assembled a good young nucleus of talent, and we look forward to its development. Unfortunately, the results over the past 3 years have not been what any of us want. We take full responsibility for those results and look forward to the kind of success our fans expect. How do you react to the news that Joe Schoen will lead the search for the next head coach, despite your lack of confidence in it? And also, do you think that is the right move for the Giants here to pair Joe Schoen with whoever will be the next head coach of the franchise?
I'm not surprised because I kind of figured that they were going to do that. And I think that's why there's been articles and different things. It happened last year and it's happened this year so far, basically to prepare the fan base that we'll fire the coaching staff, but we're keeping the GM. In my opinion, it's not the right move. I don't like the idea of forcing a head coach onto a GM. And I think with Daboll and Schoen, it was okay, well, they have experience, they've worked together, they have a good relationship, they're coming in at the same time. And while I don't think you have to say, well, if they don't get along anymore, then you have to fire them both, I think it's more of the fact that, you know, we've seen different versions of Joe Schoen. And I think if you watch Hard Knocks, and I don't know how other GMs or other people in the league feel about him, but I think he rubbed some people the wrong way with what we saw on Hard Knocks. And that's what concerns me, that you could say, well, they have Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors, and Dexter Lawrence, and yada, yada, and they have this talent. And, they just need a good coach, and that will be enough to bring in a good head coach. But they're still going to have to work very closely with Joe Schoen. And I think there have been a lot of bad roster decisions that have gone on in this organization since Joe Schoen has been GM. And we can talk about one as easily as the fact that they repeatedly tell us over and over that they play players based on their talent and abilities, not where they were drafted or how much money they make. But that's not true, because Russell Wilson is quarterback 2 of this team. And we have seen when he has come into the game that the head coach doesn't let him throw the ball, which was exactly what happened with Tommy DeVito a couple years ago. And the one thing I want to see Kafka do is make Jameis Winston quarterback 1, because I know we're not seeing Jackson Dart on Sunday. And it's decisions like that. It's the fact that last week, Lil Jordan Humphrey, who spent all summer practicing with Jackson Dart and they had a great rapport. You instead elevate Ray McLeod, who came out of nowhere and has barely practiced with them. Gunnar Olszewski is stepping in as your wide receiver instead of Amir Smith-Marset, who got a ton of snaps this whole summer with Jackson Dart and Jameis Winston. It's things like that. It's keeping Evan Neal on this football team when he's useless and inactive 9 out of 10 weeks. Jalen Hyatt is active on Sunday, doesn't play a single snap. But they traded up for him, so he has to stay here. So I don't like a lot of the roster moves that have been made.
So you haven't liked a lot of the roster moves with Schoen. And I glean from you saying all that, Adrianna, that if you had it your way, right, and you were John Mara, you would have given Joe Schoen the boot today as well too, or at least at the end of the season? You would have just gone cleaned house and went in a completely new GM and new coach, correct?
Yes. The reason why is because I like Brandon Brown, who's the assistant GM. But the biggest question that I have about Brandon Brown, because he has reiterated some of the same sentiment as Joe Schoen, is would he make any roster moves differently throughout the season? And that's what I would want to know if he was promoted to GM for the next 7 weeks. Would we see a little Jordan Humphrey elevation? Would we see Evan Neal cut? Would Jalen Hyatt have been traded? Would Tay Banks have been traded? Because it was reported that the Colts reached out to the Giants about Tay Banks, and he's still on this roster, and he's not a very good football player for the Giants. So that's what I would wonder is, would anything change if Brandon Brown was the GM for the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's interesting because even when I was talking to Mike Vaccaro before you, we know that the Giants have always wanted stability, right? They don't really want to be making all these changes to coaches or with the GM. And I thought maybe, just maybe, John Mara might say, all right, we're going to wait this out. The seat's a little bit hot for Joe Schoen. And, maybe there's a little fire around and we'll make a decision at the end of the season. I think the fact that this comes out now is very interesting following the firing of Daboll, that John Mara came out, has a statement, and has said, hey, this guy's going to be with us. He's going to hire the new head coach. Now, that's done. He's going to hire the new head coach. We get all that. How long of a rope should Joe Schoen get is the real next question to me, right? Is it just next season? He's not going to, let's say whoever the new head coach is, just to spitball out here. Let's say he starts next season. I'm not wishing you this on you, Adrianna, the rest of the Giants fan base. But let's say the coach starts the season 0-5. Are we then blaming Joe Schoen for hiring the wrong coach? And is the rope fair for Joe Schoen? Does he deserve that? I mean, deserve has nothing to do with it, as I like to say sometimes, but how much of a rope are they going to give Joe Schoen? And is that a concern? Is that part of the reason of what you're saying, why sometimes you just want to cut bait and have, new GM, new coach, whole new regime come in? I don't know. It's not really a question. I'm kind of trying to figure this out loud. I don't know if that's necessarily the right move, and I can understand where some fans are going to criticize that. So I guess this is what I'll say. And to ask you as a question of what you think as a fan, what do you think you need to see from Joe Schoen in the next, I don't even want to say the year, just through the offseason? Let's just go through that. Through the offseason. So go through the offseason towards the NFL draft, where he absolutely needs to hit again. But what do you need to see from him for you to say, okay, the seat's no longer hot for Mr. Joe Schoen?
That's a good question because, like you said, the draft and free agency are going to be really important. The thing that I'm worried about now is that you're giving another year to a GM and free agency spending. Now, I always joke, it's not my money. I don't care about the cap.
Right.
You guys figure it out.
Right.
You get paid to do it. But there are certain guys that I would re-sign and certain guys that I would not re-sign. And I hope if Joe, this is what I want to see. I want to see him re-sign some of the key players that have played well. That means Micah McFadden, Daniel Bellinger, Cordell Flott, Jermaine Illuminor. Keep some of the good talent in-house because we have 7 draft picks and we don't have a 3rd round pick this year because we traded it for Dart. So we have to focus on retaining good talent and not being afraid to trade players just because they are Joe Schoen draft picks. If he traded Tay Banks, if he cuts Evan Neal, if he trades or cuts Jalen Hyatt, if he can cut ties with some of the players that he has specifically picked who are not playing well, who are not a part of this football team and are not contributing, that would make me feel like, okay, maybe he's willing to do something different this year. And I've said that I think he's learned a little bit from his mistakes. He learned that not re-signing Xavier McKinney was a problem. And he learned it the hard way because then he had to go sign Javon Hollins and he had to draft Tyler Nubin. So, I think he's learned in some respects, but to me, that would be really important. Okay, he's not just saying, well, this is my guy. I drafted him. We have to keep him.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. We did have a poll in the chat asking people if they thought keeping Joe Schoen on was the right move. 86% of the people have said no. So a lot of people are not team Joe Schoen right now at all whatsoever.